Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarane. Trinadapi Sunichena Tarar Ivas Hishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. Hare Nama Hare Nama Hare Nama Vakivalam Kalau Nastyeva 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 Gatiranyata. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jai Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jai Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Krishna 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 Hey. Krishna 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 Rakshama. Krishna 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 Bhaktima. Krishna 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 Rakshama. Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshama. Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Bhaktima. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribrajakacha Stotra Satyasi Sriman. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Nama Acharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Jamuna Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Shamaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande. All glories to the devotees of ISKCON Bergen, New Jersey. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hari Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. So I guess we're good to go. Continue. Are we good? All right. So I've been given the assignment of Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse 63. Prabhupada entitles chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Krodhad bhavati sammoha. Sammohat smriti vibramaha. Smriti brangshad buddhi nasho. Buddhi nashat pranasyati. Krodhat, from anger. Bhavati, takes place. Sammoha, perfect illusion. Sammohat, from illusion. Smriti, of memory. Vibramaha, bewilderment. Smriti brangshat, after bewilderment of memory. Buddhi nasha, loss of intelligence. Buddhi nashat, and from loss of intelligence, pranasyati, one falls down. Prabhupada's translation, as we find in the BBT Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, from anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. Purport by the ISKCON founder Acharya, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Rupa Goswami has given us this direction. Prapanchikataya buddhya hari sambandhi vastuna mumukshubi parityago vairagyam falgo katyate. By development of Krishna consciousness, one can know that everything has its use in the service of the Lord. Those who are without knowledge of Krishna consciousness artificially try to avoid material objects, and as a result, although they desire liberation from material bondage, they do not attain to the perfect stage of renunciation. Their so-called renunciation is called falgu, or less important. On the other hand, a person in Krishna consciousness knows how to use everything in the service of the Lord, and therefore he does not become a victim of material consciousness. For example, for an impersonalist, the Lord, or the Absolute, being impersonal, cannot eat, whereas an impersonalist tries to avoid good eatables. A devotee knows that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, and that Krishna eats all that is offered to him in devotion. So after offering good eatables to the Lord, the devotee takes the remnants called prasadam. Thus everything becomes spiritualized, and there is no danger of a downfall. The devotee takes prasadam in Krishna consciousness, whereas the non-devotee rejects it as material. The impersonalist, therefore, cannot enjoy life due to his artificial renunciation. And for this, a slight agitation of the mind pulls him down once again into the pool of material existence. It is said that such a soul, even though rising up to the point of liberation, falls down again due to his not having support in devotional service. So, when I was given this assignment by my good longtime friend, Ramachandra Das, who I am very indebted to, because he has engaged me so nicely over these years. I was waiting for Krishna to send me a text message how I should present this class. And so, for the past year, I have been absorbed in KrishnaBook. I do a 1-hour KrishnaBook class every week with devotees from Panama. And so since I'm pretty much exclusively absorbed in KrishnaBook, and since the topic today is anger, beginning of today's cycle was anger, so I went through KrishnaBook and found the specific instances which are all based on anger. So we're going to Vrindavan, first of all, to hear about anger. If you are ready to continue, just say, Hare Krishna. Very good. Jai. All right. So my first excerpt takes place in Vrindavan during the pastime of the Kalia snake. Prabhupada writes, for 2 hours, Krishna remained like an ordinary child gripped in the coils of Kalia. But when Krishna saw that all the inhabitants of Gokula, including his mother and father, the gopis, the cowherder boys, and the cows, were just on the point of death, and they had no other shelter for salvation from imminent death, Krishna immediately freed himself from Kalia. Krishna began to expand his body, and when the serpent tried to hold Krishna, Kalia felt a great strain. On account of the strain, Kalia's coil slackened, and Kalia had no alternative but to let loose the personality of Godhead, Krishna, from his grasp. Kalia then became very angry, and his great hoods expanded. He exhaled poisonous fumes from his nostrils. His eyes blazed like fire, and flames issued from his mouth. The great serpent remained still for some time, looking at Krishna. Licking his lips with bifurcated tongues, the serpent looked at Krishna with double hoods, and his eyesight was full of poison. Krishna immediately pounced upon Kalia, just as Garuda swoops down on a snake. Thus attacked, Kalia looked for an opportunity to bite Krishna, but Krishna moved around Kalia, and as Krishna and Kalia moved in a circle, the serpent gradually became fatigued, and his strength seemed to diminish considerably. Krishna immediately pressed down the serpent's hoods and jumped up upon them. Krishna's lotus feet then became tinged with red from the rays of the jewels on Kalia's hoods. Then he, who is the original artist of all fine arts such as dancing, began to dance upon the hoods of the serpent Kalia, although they were moving to and fro. And upon seeing this, the denizens of the upper planetary systems showered down flowers, beat drums, played different types of flutes, and sang various prayers and songs. In this way, all the denizens of heaven, such as the Gandharvas, Siddhas, and demigods, all became very much pleased. So the second excerpt on this topic of anger is where Kalia offers his prayers, and while he is surrendering. Kalia has the distinction. There were only 2 demons that Krishna did not kill. So one was Kalia and the other was Bana Asura. So because Kalia was surrendered and his wives, the Naga Patnis, prayed for him, Krishna did not kill him. So here is more on this anger. After the Naga Patnis submitted their prayers, Lord Krishna released Kalia from punishment. Kalia was already unconscious from being struck by Krishna, but upon regaining consciousness and being released from Krishna's punishment, Kalia got back his life force and the working power of his senses. And with folded hands, Kalia began to pray to the Supreme Lord, Krishna. My dear Lord, I have been born in such a species that by nature I am angry and envious. Being in the darkest region of the mode of ignorance, your Lordship knows very well that it is difficult to give up one's natural instincts, although by such instincts the living creature transmigrates from one body to another. Prabhupada now comments, it is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that it is very difficult to get out of the clutches of material nature. But if anyone surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, then the modes of material nature can no longer act upon one. Kalia continued praying, my dear Lord, you are the original creator of the modes of material nature by which this universe is created. You are the cause of the different kinds of mentality possessed by the living creatures, by which they have attained different varieties of body. My dear Lord, I am born as a serpent, and therefore by natural instinct I am very angry. How is it then possible to give up my acquired nature without your mercy? It is very difficult to get out of the clutches of your Maya, but by your Maya we remain enslaved. And so, my dear Lord, kindly excuse me for my inevitable material tendencies. I surrender unto you. Now you can punish me or save me as your desire. My next excerpt, number 3, I have 7 excerpts. So this third excerpt takes place during the Govardhan Leela pastime. When Krishna saved the inhabitants of Vrindavan from the wrath of Indra by lifting Govardhan hill, a Surabhi cow from Goloka Vrindavan, as well as King Indra from the heavenly planets, appeared before Krishna. Indra, the king of heaven, was conscious of his offense. Therefore Indra stealthily appeared before Krishna in a secluded place. Indra immediately fell down at the lotus feet of Krishna, although Indra's own crown was dazzling like sunshine. Indra knew about the exalted position of Krishna because Krishna is the master of Indra. But Indra could not believe that Krishna could come down and live in Vrindavan among the cowherder men. So when Krishna defied the authority of Indra, Indra became angry because Indra thought that he was all in all within the universe and that no one was as powerful as he. But after this incident, Indra's false, puffed-up prestige was destroyed. And being conscious of his subordinate position, Indra appeared before Krishna with folded hands and began to offer prayers. My fourth excerpt on this topic of anger has to do with the incident of Krishna entering the cave of Jambavan. Hearing the nurse's cries, Jambavan appeared on the scene in a very angry mood. Jambavan was actually a great devotee of Lord Krishna, but because Jambavan was angry, Jambavan could not recognize his master and thought Krishna to be an ordinary man. And for this reason, they fought each other. So this brings to mind the statement of Bhagavad Gita, in which Krishna advises Arjuna to get free from anger, greed, and lust in order to rise to the spiritual platform. Lust, anger, and greed run parallel in the heart and check one's progress on the spiritual path. Although Jambavan was the strongest living entity of that time, practically all the joints of his bodily limbs became slackened, and his strength was reduced practically to nil, for Jambavan was struck constantly by the fists of Sri Krishna for many, many days. Feeling very tired, with perspiration all over his body, Jambavan was astonished. Who was this opponent who was fighting so hard with him? Jambavan was quite aware of his own superhuman bodily strength. But when Jambavan felt tired from being struck by Krishna, Jambavan could understand that Krishna was no one else but his worshipful Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This incident has special significance for devotees. In the beginning, Jambavan could not understand Krishna because his vision was obscured by material attachment. Jambavan was attached to his boy and to the greatly valuable Syamantaka jewel, which Jambavan did not want to spare for Krishna. In fact, when Krishna came there, Jambavan became angry, thinking that Krishna had come to take away the jewel. This is the material position. Although one is very strong in body, that cannot help one understand Krishna. My next example of anger appears later on during the Rajasuya sacrifice, when King Shishupal blasphemes Krishna. So here is the excerpt. In that meeting, King Shishupal was also present. He was an avowed enemy of Krishna for many reasons, especially because of Krishna's having stolen Rukmini from Shishupal's intended marriage ceremony. Therefore, Shishupal could not tolerate such honoring of Krishna in the Agra Puja and glorification of Krishna's qualities. So instead of being happy to hear the glories of Krishna, Shishupal became very angry. When everyone offered respect to Krishna by standing up, Shishupal remained in his seat. But as Shishupal became angrier at Krishna's being angry, Shishupal suddenly stood up, raised his hand, and spoke very strongly and fearlessly against Lord Krishna in such a way that even Lord Krishna could hear Shishupal distinctly. How can this Krishna be fit to accept the first worship in this great sacrifice? Why? We cannot even ascertain which caste this Krishna belongs to or what Krishna's actual occupational duty is. Krishna does not belong to a high family. Krishna is so independent that no one knows Krishna's principles of religious life. Indeed, it appears that Krishna is outside the jurisdiction of all religious principles. Krishna always acts independently, not caring for the Vedic injunctions and regulative principles. Therefore, Krishna is devoid of all good qualities. So under these circumstances, how can Krishna be fit to accept the first worship in the sacrifice? Krishna is so foolish that he has left Mathura, which is inhabited by highly elevated persons following the Vedic culture, and has taken shelter in the ocean where there is not even talk of the Vedas. Instead of living openly, Krishna has constructed a fort within the water and is living in a place where there is no discussion of Vedic knowledge. And whenever Krishna does come out of Dwaraka, he simply harasses the citizens like a dacoit, thief, or rogue. Shishupal thus went crazy because of Krishna's being elected the supreme first-person worship in that Rajasuya meeting. And Shishupal spoke so irresponsible that it appeared Shishupal had lost all of his good fortune. Being overcast with misfortune, Shishupal continued to insult Krishna, and Lord Krishna patiently heard Shishupal without protest. Just as a lion does not care when a flock of jackals howl, similarly, Lord Krishna remained silent and unprovoked. Krishna did not reply to even a single accusation made by Shishupal. But all the members present in that meeting, except for a few who agreed with Shishupal, were very much agitated, because it is the duty of any respectable person not to tolerate blasphemy against God or his devotee. Some of them, who thought that they could not properly take action against Shishupal, left the assembly in protest, covering their ears with their hands in order not to hear any further accusations against Krishna. Thus they left the meeting, condemning the action of Shishupal. For it is the Vedic injunction that whenever there is blasphemy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one must immediately leave. And if one does not do so, he or she becomes bereft of one's pious activities and is degraded to a lower condition of life. All the kings present, belonging to the Kuru dynasty, Matsya dynasty, Kekaya dynasty, and Sanjay dynasty, became very angry and immediately took up their swords and shields to kill Shishupal, who was so foolish that he was not even slightly agitated, although the kings present were now ready to kill him. Shishupal did not even care to think of the pros and cons of his foolish talking, and instead of stopping when he saw all the kings were ready to kill him, Shishupal stood to fight with them, and thus took up his sword and shield. So, when Lord Krishna saw that they were going to a fight in the arena of the auspicious Rajasuya Yajna, Krishna personally pacified them. Out of his causeless mercy, Krishna himself decided to kill Shishupal. When Shishupal was abusing the kings who were about to attack him, Lord Krishna took up his disc, which was as sharp as the blade of a razor, and immediately separated Shishupal's head from his body. Example number 6. Once upon a time, King Yudhisthira, who was sitting on his golden throne in the palace, which was constructed by the demon Maya Danava, Yudhisthira's 4 brothers and other relatives, as well as Yudhisthira's great well-wisher Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, were all present. And the material opulence of King Yudhisthira seemed no less than that of Lord Brahma. So when Yudhisthira was sitting on the throne, surrounded by his friends, and the reciters were offering prayers to Yudhisthira in the form of nice songs, Duryodhana suddenly came to the palace along with his younger brothers. Duryodhana was decorated with a helmet, and Duryodhana carried a sword in his hand. Duryodhana was always in an envious and angry mood, and therefore, even on a slight provocation, Duryodhana spoke sharply with the doorkeepers, and thus became angry. By the craftsmanship of the demon Maya Danava, the palace was so decorated in different places that one who did not know the tricks would consider water to be land and land to be water. Duryodhana was illusioned by this craftsmanship, and while crossing water, thinking it to be land, Duryodhana fell in. When Duryodhana, out of his foolishness, had thus fallen, the queens enjoyed the incident by laughing. King Yudhisthira could understand the feelings of Duryodhana, and Yudhisthira tried to restrain the queens. But Lord Krishna indicated that King Yudhisthira should not restrain the queens from enjoying the incident, because Krishna desired that Duryodhana be fooled in that way, and that all of them enjoy Duryodhana's foolish behavior. When everyone laughed, Duryodhana felt it very insulted, and his bodily hair stood up in anger. Being thus insulted, Duryodhana immediately left the palace, bowing his head. Yet Duryodhana was silent and did not protest. But when Duryodhana left in such an angry mood, everyone regretted the incident, and King Yudhisthira also was very sorry. But despite all these occurrences, Krishna was silent. Krishna did not say anything against or in favor of the whole incident. And so it appeared that Duryodhana had been put into illusion by the supreme will of Lord Krishna. And this was the beginning of the enmity between the 2 sects of the Kuru dynasty. This appeared to be part of Krishna's plan in Krishna's mission to decrease the burden of the world. King Parikshit had thus inquired from Shukadeva Goswami why Duryodhana was not satisfied after the termination of the great Rajasuya sacrifice. And thus it was explained by Shukadeva Goswami. So here's my final excerpt on this topic. Being thus deputed, the great sage Bhrigu Muni first of all went to his father's residence in Brahmaloka. The three deities are the controllers of the three material qualities, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. The plan decided by the sages was for Bhrigu to test which one of the predominating deities possesses the quality of goodness in full. Therefore, when Bhrigu Muni reached his father, Lord Brahma, because Bhrigu wanted to test whether Lord Brahma had the quality of goodness, Bhrigu Muni purposely did not offer respects to his father, either by offering obeisances or by offering prayers. After all, it is the duty of a son or disciple to offer respects and recite suitable prayers when he approaches his father or spiritual master. But Bhrigu Muni purposely failed to offer respects just to see Lord Brahma's reaction to this negligence. Lord Brahma was very angry at his son's impudence, and Brahma showed signs which definitely proved this to be so. Brahma was even prepared to condemn Bhrigu by cursing him. But because Bhrigu was his son, Lord Brahma controlled his anger with his great intelligence. This means that although the quality of passion was prominent in Lord Brahma, he had the power to control it. Lord Brahma's anger and controlling his anger are likened to fire and water. Water is produced from fire at the beginning of creation, but fire can be extinguished with water. Similarly, although Lord Brahma was very angry due to his quality of passion, Lord Brahma could still control his passion because Bhrigu Muni was his son. After testing Lord Brahma, Bhrigu Muni went directly to Mount Kailas, where Lord Shiva resides. Now, Bhrigu Muni happened to be Lord Shiva's brother. Therefore, as soon as Bhrigu Muni approached, Lord Shiva was very glad and personally rose to embrace Bhrigu. But when Lord Shiva approached, Bhrigu Muni refused to embrace Lord Shiva. He said, "Oh, my dear brother, you are always very impure. Because you smear your body with ashes, well, you are not very clean. So please, do not touch me." So when Bhrigu Muni refused to embrace his brother, saying that Lord Shiva was impure, Lord Shiva became very angry with Bhrigu. It is said that an offense can be committed either with the body, with the mind, or by speech. Bhrigu Muni's first offense, committed towards his father, Lord Brahma, was an offense within the mind. Bhrigu Muni's second offense, committed toward Lord Shiva by insulting him, criticizing him for his unclean habits, was an offense by speech. Because the quality of ignorance is prominent in Lord Shiva, when he heard Bhrigu's insult, Shiva's eyes immediately became red with anger. And with uncontrollable rage, Lord Shiva took up his trident and prepared himself to kill Bhrigu Muni. But at that time, Lord Shiva's wife, Parvati, was present. Her personality, like that of Lord Shiva, her husband, is a mixture of the three qualities, and therefore she is called Triguna Mayi. In this case, Parvati saved the situation by evoking Lord Shiva's quality of goodness. Parvati fell down at the feet of her husband, and with sweet words, Parvati talked Lord Shiva out of killing Bhrigu Muni. So after being saved from the anger of Lord Shiva, Bhrigu Muni went directly to the planet Shwetadweep, where Lord Vishnu lies on a bed of flowers in the company of his wife, the goddess of fortune, who at that time was engaged in massaging Vishnu's lotus feet. There, Bhrigu Muni purposely committed the greatest sin by offending Lord Vishnu by his bodily activities. The first offense committed by Bhrigu Muni was mental, the second offense vocal, and the third offense was corporal. These different offenses are progressively greater in degree. An offense committed within the mind is a positive offense. The same offense committed verbally is comparatively more grave, and when committed by bodily action, it is superlative in offensiveness. So Bhrigu Muni thus committed the greatest offense by kicking the chest of Lord Vishnu with his foot in the presence of the goddess of fortune. Of course, Lord Vishnu is always merciful. So Vishnu did not become angry at the activities of Bhrigu Muni, because Bhrigu Muni was a great Brahmana, and a Brahmana is to be excused even if he sometimes commits an offense. And so Lord Vishnu set this example. But yet it is said that from that time of this incident, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, has not been very favorably disposed towards the Brahmanas. And therefore, because the goddess of fortune withholds her benedictions from the Brahmanas are generally very poor. Bhrigu Muni's kicking the chest of Lord Vishnu with his foot was certainly a great offense. But Lord Vishnu is so great that he did not care. The so-called Brahmanas of the age of Kali are sometimes very proud that a great Brahmana like Bhrigu Muni could touch the chest of Lord Vishnu with his foot. But in fact, when Bhrigu Muni kicked the chest of Lord Vishnu, it was the greatest offense, although Lord Vishnu, being greatly magnanimous, did not take it very seriously. Instead of being angry or cursing Bhrigu Muni, Lord Vishnu immediately got up from his bed along with his wife, the goddess of fortune, and they offered respectful obeisances to the Brahmana Bhrigu Muni. Lord Vishnu addressed Bhrigu as follows: "My dear Brahmana, it is my greatest fortune that you have come here. Please therefore sit down on this cushion just for a few minutes. My dear Brahmana, I am very sorry that when you first entered my home, I could not receive you properly. It was a great offense on my part, and I beg you to pardon me. Oh, you are so pure and great that the water which washes your feet can purify even the places of pilgrimage. Therefore, I request you to purify my Vaikuntha planet where I live with my associates. Oh, my dear Father, oh great sage, I know that your feet are very soft, like a lotus flower, and that my chest is as hard as a thunderbolt. I am therefore afraid that you may have felt some pain by kicking my chest. So let me touch your feet to relieve the pain you have suffered." And so Lord Vishnu then began to massage the feet of Bhrigu Muni, and the Lord continued to address him. "My dear Brahmana, my chest has now become sanctified because of the touch of your feet, and I am now assured that the goddess of fortune Lakshmi will be very glad to live there perpetually." Another name for Lakshmi is Chanchala, indicating that she does not stay in one place for a long time. Therefore, we see that a rich man's family sometimes becomes poor after a few generations, and sometimes we see that a poor man's family becomes very rich. Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is Chanchala, flickering in this material world, whereas in the Vaikuntha planets, Lakshmi eternally lives at the lotus feet of the Lord. Because Lakshmi is famous as being Chanchala, Lord Narayan indicated that Lakshmi may not have been living perpetually by his chest, but now, because his chest had been touched by the feet of Bhrigu Muni, it was now sanctified. And now there was no chance that the goddess of fortune would leave. Bhrigu Muni, however, could now understand his own position and that of Lord Vishnu. Bhrigu was now struck with wonder at the behavior of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because of his gratitude, Bhrigu's voice choked up, and Bhrigu was unable to reply to the words of Lord Vishnu. Tears glided down from his eyes, and Bhrigu could not say anything. Bhrigu simply stood silently before Lord Vishnu. And so, after testing Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu, Bhrigu Muni returned to the assembly of great sages on the bank of the river Saraswati and described the entire incident. After hearing Bhrigu Muni with great attention, the sages concluded that of all the predominating deities, Lord Vishnu is certainly the greatest. And so it is to be understood that all the gathered sages were serious students of the Vedic literature, but had not yet come to a definite conclusion as to who is the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead. But after hearing Bhrigu Muni's experience in meeting all the three predominating deities, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Lord Vishnu, the sages concluded that Lord Vishnu is the supreme truth, the personality of Godhead. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam that after hearing the details from Bhrigu Muni, the sages were astonished, because although Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva were immediately agitated, Lord Vishnu, in spite of being kicked by Bhrigu Muni, was not agitated in the least. The example is given that small lamps may be agitated by a slight breeze, but the greatest lamp, or the greatest illuminating source, the sun, is never moved, even by the greatest hurricane. Therefore, one's greatness has to be estimated by one's ability to tolerate provoking situations. The sages gathered on the bank of the river Saraswati concluded that one who wants actual peace and freedom from all fear should take shelter of the lotus feet of Vishnu. since Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva lost their peaceful attitude upon a slight provocation, how then can they maintain the peace and tranquility of their devotees? And as far as Lord Vishnu, it is stated in Bhagavad Gita that anyone who accepts Lord Vishnu or Krishna as the supreme friend attains the highest perfection of peaceful life. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So now, before I give my blessings, I will recite what I call the spiritual insurance policy. And I'm blessing all the devotees who have come online, especially my good friend Ramachandra, the leader of all the devotees there in Bergen. But this policy, insurance policy, is for everyone who has come online. Yes, you can thank me later. Namaste Narasimhaya, Namaste Narasimhaya, Prahlad Ahlad Dayane, Hiranya Kashipo Vaksha, Shilatankana Kalaye, Ito Nrsinga Padato Nrsinga, Yato Yato Yamitato Nrsinga, Bahir Nrsinga Hridaye Nrsinga, Nrsinga Madim Sharanang Prapadye, Nrsingham Adim Sharanang Prapadye, Nrsingham Adim Sharanam Prapadye, Tavakara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Sringam, Dalita Hiranya Kashipu Tan Ringam, Keshavadrita Narahadi Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Keshavadrita Narahadi Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare, 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Tat Sat.